Three, two, one. We are live on Through a Therapist's Eyes podcast.
All right, I like it. Welcome to another edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes. I am Chris Gazdick, and you are...
Craig Graves, man.
Remember, DW said you got to say your name. We invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. Our goal is to create emotional growth through the medium of this podcast, being aware it's not a delivery of therapy service in any way. Feedback and discussion is not only welcomed but sought on a website through therapist'seyes.com podcast blog tab. How you doing, sir?
Man, I'm doing good. It's been a good day. I'm doing great.
All right, I thought from time to time just weird things go through my head. Figure sometimes people might do the super fast mode.
Super fast mode.
Listen to podcasts quickly.
Oh yeah.
Times 2, times 4. I thought I would just talk really fast and mess with
Sometimes
people when they get on there and do that.
But sometimes you talk fast. You do, dude.
I talk fast and loud, unfortunately, sometimes. The human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. Metrolina Psychotherapy since 2010. They still are at 704-461-8253. Been doing it since 2010. Got 4 clinicians right now. John Pope, Tanya Price, Chris Gazdick, and Allison Tucker. I don't think I ever did say their names, did we?
First time you've ever done that. Yeah. We've mentioned a couple of them.
Yeah. There's some good guys down there. They do a good job with mental health and substance abuse therapy. NetSmart Technologies will be talked about in a little bit. Guess what, Craig? This is episode 40.
I know, right? Big 4-0, buddy.
Do we got a cake or something?
No. We should go out and celebrate after, though.
That sounds like a good idea. Conflict resolution. That's the topic of the day. But we're going to do my fun fact. And I got a cool fun fact. Not a lot of people know this. I don't even really go by it. But I was talking about it. I forget why it came up in a session. The first little bit, I'm just kind of kicking it around with people, chilling out with people in a session and, kind of de-escalating, checking in with the week and how things are going. So it's lots of different general topics come up. And nicknames came up or whatever. So I just decided to share a nickname. I thought, you know what? I need to share on the show what my nickname is. You have no idea that I even have a nickname, do you?
I did not know that you had a nickname.
So this is I'm trying to be a quick story with it, but it's Cecil.
Cecil.
Now, I don't really go by it. I don't really use it, but it was generated in college, right? Oh, God, can I say shit? You got a shit-eating grin on your face right now.
Say whatever you want to. Well, I had an uncle named Cecil. You kind of look like him.
Oh, really? So,
yeah.
So at college in my freshman dorm, I really kind of struggled greatly, man. My first semester at WVU, I had bad homesickness. I wasn't really, I didn't come into my own yet really at all. And so pretty uncomfortable, difficult transition time. And so I didn't really hang out with a lot of the guys on the floor and whatever. But, we would all go out and it was a floor of like 70 different dudes, man, all dudes on this floor. Anyway, they created nicknames for somebody. And somehow I found out that my nickname was Cecil. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that all about, And they're like, well, Cecil, from the Tortoise and the Hare, right? Well, Cecil was slow. He was slow. So I don't know if this was a slice on me, if it was giving me a hard time. But truthfully, it's totally apropos. And I'll tell you why. My nickname Cecil was because I guess they thought I was slow. But West Virginia has a little bit of party attitude down there, right? You've heard this before?
I have not.
All right. Well, there was a dude. Yes, you have. Shut up. There was a dude that had a 0.00 GPA on my freshman floor. I'm not kidding you. Love you, dude, man. I forget his name, actually. I can picture him right now as I talk about it. But anyway, Tortoise won the race, man. Persistent.
Yeah, persistence.
Absolutely consistent. Consistently persistent, and he won the race against the much faster Hare. Well, I'll be honest with you, man. I graduated magna cum laude. That's a little fun fact, too, I guess.
That's pretty impressive. So Cecil was the tortoise.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Cecil was the tortoise and the hare. So
I had no idea.
I had some good ideals, I guess, somewhere. Maybe that's what they saw.
Yeah. Interesting, man.
Conflict resolution. That's what we're on today. It's a general topic that you come up, and I guess I like to catch a cold. We haven't done that. Getting back to a little bit of our normal thing, Craig, with conflict resolution, catching a cold. I'm kind of curious where and what in life would you think about when you think about conflict resolution? Like where is this going to be used most? What area of life do you use conflict resolution skills?
I'm thinking probably your close relationships, with children perhaps, and with your spouse, maybe perhaps your parents. I mean, conflict is something that happens between people who are in different kinds of relationships, right? I mean,
yeah, I think you're right on, and that's what that's what I think of it. But I've been, particularly since doing this podcast, in a lot of ways, man, I'm kind of broadening my scope in some of the ways that mental health. It's funny because I think of mental health in a lot of different directions, but I think it affects so many areas of life. Period.
Mental health.
Yeah, like
absolutely.
Like there's
dude.
and conflict resolution is a big piece of mental health. In our little sphere of the world in mental health, I think you think of conflict resolution in exactly that, close interpersonal relationships. I don't bring up conflict resolution skills very often unless I'm doing a marriage counseling session, period. And then I would bring out this thing and we'd talk about, how do you resolve conflict and whatever. But I tell you, particularly doing this show and just thinking about it in different terms, that's so limited in scope in where you would use this stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm thinking about it in the business boardroom, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm thinking about it in parenting, sure, like you mentioned, family, and certainly marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you got something big going on with a business partner, or a church with a group that you're organizing in a church. Really, anytime people get together, you're going to have conflict. We know this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe our senators up there in D.C.
Yeah,
need to get some conflict resolution skills.
They need you to come up there and speak to them.
Hey, I'm there.
Grief.
Sir. I'm there, Senator.
Fiasco that thing is.
Right. So we're building off shows. Episode 11, we did marriage foundations, and I think that this is something in conflict resolution. You listen to that when you want to listen to this. Conflict resolution, I'm going to talk about, we'll discuss really emotional awareness in that. I mean, that goes right down to episode 1 and 2. First, right out the gate, contentment and dealing with self-care, taking care of your emotional self internally before you even try to deal with the other person. And that episode 5 leads right to mindfulness. And in episode 8, we'll mention moral courage. Those are a few of the shows that I want to point the audience to because we're building now. We're building on things and going deeper on stuff.
Yeah.
So, the areas of life was the first thing I thought about. Inner office politics in general, we just chatted about, the government.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really, conflicts are very, very real. And I don't think people deal with them well. What says you? I think, Craig, that they don't deal with them super well because they're not managing their internal self. A person doesn't manage their internal self very well at all when they're in conflict.
Okay. Go into that a little deeper. What does that mean? Well,
I say that. What says you? I'm saying when you're in conflict in a group of people, in a business arrangement, and certainly a marriage, it's hot. It's deep. It's very intense. I don't think people tend to manage themselves well, generally speaking, when they're in conflict with somebody.
Now, when you say manage yourself, you mean like your emotional self? Or,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Emotions run high, and I think you do and say things you wouldn't normally say in a heightened emotional state. I mean,
have you ever been in an office? Well, actually, I know you have. Not too long ago, you talked about this supervisor that you had one day. Remember you talking about him?
On the show?
Yeah, you talked about that on the show where this guy was like, God, I don't know how you put it, but he was just...
Oh, yeah.
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 Right?
Yeah, one second the guy would be, laughing and joking with everybody. And the next, he'd be beating his fist on the table, cursing somebody out, calling us a bunch of idiots.
Like literally.
Whatever. Oh, yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. That's why I thought maybe the guy was, bipolar or something.
And dang well might have been, man. Listen, when you are interacting with people, you're going to have differences of opinion. And in the simplest form of conflict, it's I think one way and you think another. Which way are we together going to go? That happens all the time, folks. And yeah, I can think back in different situations in offices that I've been a part of. Man, people are just, crashing into each other in conflict, and it doesn't go well. And I think you see these things play out in all of those types of interactions. So yeah, if you have a business out there, I'd love to come and talk to your business about this. How do you really do conflicts? Because there's a lot to it.
Yeah,
it has a lot to do with.
I think in an office situation, it can get hairy because you got people who are trying to climb the ladder or prove their point, and the ego gets in the way a lot too. You don't want to be wrong.
Oh,
how hard is it to admit you're wrong?
I don't.
Just
kidding. I'm always wrong.
I'm just saying. But I think I think conflict resolution is difficult in those kind of situations where ego gets involved, or you're trying to get promotion or whatever, and you feel like you've been wronged.
It really is. Listen,
or somebody takes credit for your project or something like that.
Yeah, you have a business partnership. It has been said when you are business partners with somebody, it is as though you are married to them. Now, I don't know if you've ever had a business partnership with somebody particularly, but I have, and we literally sat and talked about that.
Yeah, I've had business partnerships in the past, and there's been conflict there. I try to resolve conflicts, man. I think life's too short to stay pissed at somebody, and so there have been times when I've personally taken a high road or overlooked things.
Yeah.
And not let it ruin my relationship with somebody.
There's a place for that.
But partnerships are tough. They say the worst thing you can do is go into partnership with somebody in a business. Because it never ends well.
Well, I wouldn't say never, but it's hard.
I just said that mine ended okay. But I've known people who've had businesses that no longer speak to each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
That absolutely happens. And lawyers will tell you. I've had lawyers tell me, of just all the crazy situations that you get into, with business partners and business agreements and how you try to set that up in advance. They say one of their biggest job. A business lawyer, I think, will tell you that their biggest and most important job is before the business starts, setting up the agreements and how that stuff goes down.
Yeah, and you got to document everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's extend our minds not just to marriage, right? When we're talking about conflict, we want to extend our minds and extend our thoughts to a whole host of an array of different types of interpersonal relationships that we get on multiple different levels, even neighbors, and how you resolve things with neighbors.
So I'm assuming you're going to talk about some conflict resolution steps and
I got a 3-step
later.
thing.
Okay, so
I should write an article. 3 steps to conflict resolution.
Yeah, man, 3 steps to conflict. That's a great topic. Great,
great
steps. But I think that's a good point. So as Chris is talking, you could use these in any kind of relationship, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Right. To me, the rest of our conversation is going to be, 2 steps. Yeah, I got a 3-step thing that's kind of cool. I've pulled out in marital counseling sessions before, but we probably won't. But I think, honestly, like if I were talking about this for 3 hours, I'd do probably about the same amount of time on the actual 3-step thing that I mentioned, and then the rest of the time on the emotional content. Because I think, we've spent a little bit of time on it right now to make the point home. It is emotional management skills internally that sets up the ability to resolve a conflict.
It is the emotional, say that again.
It's the emotional management skills, man. I mean, that's what really sets up an ability to effectively resolve a conflict. Okay. I think that's a fair, I should write that down.
That's good. I think that is a good thing. Internal emotional management sets up
the ability
for conflict resolution
to work out a conflict effectively.
Okay. Okay, I'm following.
Internal emotional content. So I just feel like that's the most important piece of conflict resolution. And I'll tell you, I'm not talking about this off the cuff. When I looked at emotional content, oh, by the way, I guess I forgot to mention too, we got a couple of show links. I didn't really look at them a lot, to be honest with you. I just generally glance at the web, sometimes when I'm doing show prep to see what's out there. So there's one on a business focus that might be kind of cool on Aminet.com.org. It looked pretty interesting. And then a relational focus on helpguide.org. I really didn't review them a whole lot, to be honest with you. But I just think it's cool when we have our show notes. People can kind of go see some places and just, conglomerately pull up some cool things in conjunction and do some of their own looking and research on some things. So that's really why those were there this time. I didn't use them a whole lot. But remember we talked about episode 11, marriage foundations and such. I really feel like that abandonment and engulfment criterion and tendencies, they're based on attachment theory in marriage counseling, or really in just, the counseling world. But I feel like those primary fears, we've talked about them. If you recall, please check out the past show. It's one of our most important, I feel like, episode 11. They drive daily behavior and how you engage the world in a lot of very specific ways. And we're going to dive deeper on those two things too, probably soon. Because I think that is a huge part of internal emotional working. And I see patterns with people to a certain extent that get replicated along those lines. And so abandonment and engulfment are the two insecurities we talked about with that. And I think it's a big part of business relationships and marriage relationships and just the way that we deal with conflict and attach.
And that's an interesting thing you just said, excuse me, because when we talked about abandonment and engulfment, it was in the context of marriage and female-male relationships. But what you're saying now is you show those tendencies in other things too.
Craig, my brain has been playing around with that. And there's going to be probably a lot more to come with that as we launch into different venues and different things with some of these things of Through a Therapist's Eyes. Because, I really feel like those are primary emotional strongholds that people operate from on a larger scale than just marriage.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't thought about it in that context until now. Mm-hmm. But you might be onto something there.
I really feel like because I just see too many patterns, and it's internal emotion skills. It's internal emotional experience. And
well, let me ask you this, man. While we're on the topic of engulfment and abandonment, do you think that the abandonment personality is more likely to want to resolve a conflict versus okay?
Oh yeah.
Versus, I'm going to go ahead and say the other part of that, which is the engulfment.
Yeah.
Is not as prone to want to resolve the conflict.
It's problems work themselves out is the thought there.
Yeah.
Why we got to dig into this? I'll let it be, and it'll work itself out, and that's absolutely true in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
In a lot of other cases, it's not. That's a good example of kind of exactly what I'm alluding to.
And see, I don't like to have conflict, and I do.
I don't either.
I have conflicts in different relationships of mine. Whether it's romantic or children or friends or whatever, but I don't like for that to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it in that show. We talked about me being in the abandonment camp,
right?
And so if I have a conflict with you or my daughter or my son or whatever, I don't
something goes on inside that says,
not to get too religious or anything, but Paul said, "Don't let the sun go down on your anger." And that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a conflict, man, I want to get that thing resolved.
Right. Yeah, it's a perfect example of the internal depth that emotional patterns get created. Because there's primary sort of, you could say, executive functions, thoughts that get created from those primary, drives that happen triggered by specific insecurities for whatever reason. And it's a perfect example of how, because I think there are many people that would say, well, my gosh, why you got to deal with it? I mean, a lot of times you don't deal with it. You just shut your traps, chill out, and things will be fine. You don't need to deal with that now.
Yeah.
Because then you always have problems. I mean, just, relax over there, man. Chill it. Tame yourself. And that's true sometimes. So, by the way, there's no perfectly right or wrong answer. Let's move on though to
You might not say there's no right or wrong answer. unless you're in the situation, right?
Well,
and you're like, Dad,
right. Self-soothe is another part of this emotional, awareness, internal emotional awareness. That's where I looked at the first, where we started out this whole show and this whole concept, man. Contentment and self-care. You have to begin to being able to internally, yes, mindfulness. These are where these things come from. With early on in our show, managing that internal awareness, that emotion, that internal drive, whatever's going on, you're not going to resolve a conflict at all if you're not, managing, chilling yourself out internally.
Oh yeah, I agree.
You become completely unproductive in that conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
And contentment is a big part of that episode 2. Self-care is a big part of that episode 1.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, whatever episode that was. You've got to facilitate yourself. And if you don't facilitate yourself, you are not going to effectively run that business meeting.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. I firmly believe that, man. Managing your emotions and being mindful and being able to realize and be aware of what's going on inside your own self is like the foundation, to me, of everything else.
Everything's a big word. But yeah.
But I believe that,
Yeah.
If I feel myself becoming charged up, then I have to say, hey, look, I have to see that before I snap.
And that's why I made a note here of stress hormones. I mean, you got to be able to feel it and know it's there.
Right.
And know how to manage that. I mean, you'll feel your blood pressure. You'll feel your freaking, blushing. And that's not cute blushing. That's I'm red-faced mad.
Yeah.
You will feel your tension in your shoulder. I mean, you'll feel that if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention, you might not even know it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to try to have a conversation with your kid.
You got to be aware. Yeah.
And
Otherwise, you're like a ship on the sea. With no rudder. You're just getting tossed around by the waves. And your emotions will do that to you, man. Your emotions will just toss you around every which way you go,
Takes me back to a metaphor. Somebody had made a comment to me. They felt like a small ship in a large ocean. And that's, it'll do that.
Yeah.
It'll absolutely do that. So guard against selfishness is another concept with, internal emotional awareness.
Maybe touch on that one a little deeper.
Yeah.
Don't brush over that.
I'm not brushing over any of these. These are more important than the simple little thing that we've got with 3 steps to problem solving resolution. What did I call it?
Yeah.
Taking the other person's perspective into account is absolutely a part of managing your internal awareness and guarding against selfishness. I see it as being a good poker player. You ever play poker much? I don't. I think we talked about it not too long ago. We got to get you in that game.
Yeah, I'm not
it's
playing
fun,
much.
Man.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Haven't played much.
Yeah, poker playing is a big part of keeping. I use it actually in therapy with kids sometimes. I have teenagers. I don't know why I don't do it with adults. I probably should. It'd be fun.
Be poker face.
Because there's all kinds of metaphors. Poker face, thinking in advance, kind of managing your hand. Big part of poker is understanding what you think the other person's got in their hand. You take their perspective into account on what you're betting.
Interesting.
Good poker players are really good at knowing what you got, right?
Yeah.
You're taking their perspective. That's so not selfish. Now,
yeah.
poker, you're trying to take their money, so you're selfish.
That's interesting, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a good card player, sometimes he knows what you got.
Oh, they know. Usually they know what you
got. My father-in-law, my ex-wife's father, was a great card player.
Oh, nice.
And I would play cards with him. And he was a great poker player too, by the way. But he would, like, at the end of the game, he'd have a card, and he'd be like, here's that ace you were looking for.
Oh.
And I'm like, how did you know I was looking for it? But he would know, man. He was good.
Right.
When
you're good at taking the other person's perspective and you're organized around that way, it's a big part of.
But
it's
funny
conflicts.
that you put you kind of framed that analogy though, because Dean was a very level guy. I never saw him get rattled one way or the other.
Yeah.
And he was an excellent card player, man.
Yeah. There's a whole orientation. A whole emotional orientation a lot of times goes into that.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So moving on a little bit, positive orientation. creates better outcomes. That's kind of part of the comments I would put on the 3 things here that I got coming up, but
So a positive orientation, a positive mindset. What do you mean by that?
A big piece of conflict resolution is not really, you focus on what the solutions are. You've heard of people, I know you've heard in success manuals and people that give talks and whatever. I mean, it's true, man. You got to focus and orient yourself on what's the solution here.
Yeah.
That's where we want to spend our time.
A lot of people focus on
problems.
Don't give me any problems. Give me solutions.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's the reality of conflict resolution.
Yeah.
A business owner is sitting there, doing their stuff and running through the numbers and running the company and whatever. And you want to come with a problem? Well, that's fine. I'll listen to you, but I really want to hear your solution.
Yeah.
Give me your ideas. Give me your thoughts. Give me your creativity. Give me your energy.
Yeah.
Let's fix this. Let's make this better. It isn't, this sucks. Let's focus on the problem.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It doesn't work when you're having a conversation with your husband. You need to sit down and say, here's some solutions on things that I think we can try. I'd like to do this. I'd like to do that. Hey, kiddo, we have a problem here. Love and logic. We probably should have put that on the episode, whatever. Love and logic is very positive oriented. You got a problem. Well, what's your solution? They move immediately to that.
Yeah.
If you notice.
Yeah.
So, positive orientation. Guard against defensiveness is another factor that I brainstormed here. You got a problem with me, Craig? We have a conflict? Okay. So you're going to let me know what your problem with me is. And if I sit here and get defensive about it, which is very easy to do because you take it personally or you think it's something, or, people launch immediately, probably because of abandonment and golf kind of insecurities, whichever one, doesn't matter. You'll get defensive.
Yeah.
Because you've got a problem with me. Well, let me tell you why you shouldn't have a problem with me.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to tell people you have a problem with them.
In the first place.
I don't want to tell this guy I got a problem or this girl, whatever.
Yep.
And because of how they might react.
Right. Right. Let's take a quick break with our sponsor. I'll give you a couple more. We'll finish up defensiveness a little bit. Give you a couple more and throw through 3-step process. What's the article? Come on, write it for me.
3 steps to conflict resolution.
All right. Back in a minute. NetSmart Technologies is found on Helper.com. You want to say Helper.com back and forth 4 or 5 times?
No, let's don't do that this time.
Helper.com?
Helper.com.
Okay, yeah, right. They do a great job down there at NetSmart Technologies. These guys will help medications be prescribed online, automated for doctors. They'll do your progress notes. They'll do your electronic billing. They'll do your electronic remittance advice. Those are technical terms, right? The best thing about the guys down at Helper.com with NetSmart Technologies, therapist, helper, people will help you deal with the technology problems. Of course, there's very few problems with therapist, helper, to be honest with you. But, dude, you call them with a problem, you have a conflict with these guys, you know what they're going to do?
They're going to help you.
Absolutely. Helper.com. Check them out, guys. They're great medical billing professionals. They're electronic medically records professionals, all told. And back to the show, man. Defensiveness. It is probably, could you say defensiveness is a killer for solutions?
Yeah, I think so. And it's really hard to admit that you're wrong, Yeah,
you said that earlier. That's probably where this comes in.
People justify their actions, even if their actions are bad.
Yeah. And if you're really trying to work through something with somebody and you're carrying a problem orientation, you're probably working through that from a selfish perspective and having defensiveness as a result. Because if you're being positive about it, hey, Craig, you're bringing a problem to me. Okay, whoa, wait, man, what's your problem, man? Okay, wow, I didn't know we had that problem. How can we make this right? What are we going to do about that? Immediately. It's a different focus. It's really hard to do. I don't mean to simplify this for people in real life applications, because that guy's sitting in the desk, he's red-faced, he's yelling, he's cursing, he's telling you you're a piece of crap employee and you're not worth anything. I mean, you can just sit there and say, "Oh, okay, what's your problem?" And how, right?
Yeah.
This is hard.
Yeah.
Because it's emotional. But the more that you look at defensiveness and selfishness and try to take some of these internal emotional awareness into a conversation, man, even when you're shaken or you feel attacked, it's going to serve you well. Okay, I got another one for you. Ready for this one?
Let's have it,
Number 6?
Let's do it.
You going to read number 6? Oh, he's got to pull his glasses.
Number 6.
See if you're tracking.
Guard against blame.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like I was brainstorming this and I'm thinking about that. I'm like, man, that is a big factor. When you come at something to try to manage it, you're going to want to blame something. There's got to be a problem here, and there's got to be a reason for the problem. So blame needs to be assigned, right?
Yeah.
No.
People think that.
Right.
I don't believe that. I just said yeah, but I mean,
no.
People think that, right?
Yeah, they do.
And you have to take ownership for your actions.
Well, that probably should be number 8. Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely do.
Yeah, personal responsibility and taking ownership is probably a big part of this. You're absolutely right on there. What do you mean by that?
What, taking ownership?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to see where you have to take ownership of your part of the problem. I mean, you can't just continually lay blame. I've been taking a course online. I'll tell some more about that course later on, but I think it's going to help me understand some more of the things you and I are talking about here. And the guy's like, if a person won't take ownership of their issue and their problem, then you don't even want to work with that person until they can get to that point where they can take ownership of their issue. Yeah,
listen, you got a marital dispute. There's more than. Here's a fact. I think this is an emotional fact. I use the term emotional fact a lot. And all I mean by that, it's almost kind of like, how can you refute this? There's nothing factual about emotions a lot of times. When you're in conflict, is there not responsibility for conflict on both sides?
Yeah.
Maybe 100% of the time. Is that an emotional fact?
Yeah, it definitely is.
I mean, how are you in conflict and you don't have something to take into account of yourself about that?
Yeah.
There's probably something. But if you're looking towards blame and you're looking in a selfish perspective, you just flat out won't see it. I didn't do anything wrong here.
Yeah, right.
Do you ever hear yourself say, I didn't do anything wrong here and we're in conflict? You've probably just BS'd yourself.
Oh, you definitely have. I've told this story before, but, my ex-wife and I went to see a marriage counselor one time.
Yeah, right.
And I'm thinking, great, we're going to go get her fixed and everything's going to be good.
Yes, sir.
And I left that guy's office, man, it was a shock when I realized what part I was playing in the issue.
Yeah.
So we're talking about conflict resolution, and that's a prime example of that.
It is absolutely.
I thought, hey, this is all her fault. I'm in the clear.
Right.
And when we left there, I'm like, dude.
He's on the floor thinking, you screwed. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely, but it's natural because you want to think of yourself positively, but you got to be realistic. Like what you added, we number 8 is taking responsibility for your part in it.
Yeah,
it's a big part of that.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, Chris. Normally, when there's a conflict, it's coming from both sides, right?
Yeah.
So me saying that just made me realize my part.
Right.
So there was still.
Well, there's still another person's
on both
part.
sides of the fence.
Oh,
but I was able to realize that some of the things I was doing were adding or not adding to it, but
contributing to the issue.
Contributing is a good word to the issue. Yes.
Yeah, I tell you, it's we get naive about those things a lot of times in our own heads, and
we do
but think about it. The last thing is apologies and forgiveness, but think about it. When you start doing these things internally, you're fully empowered to change the dynamic. When you start focusing selfishly and blaming and looking at the other person's part, you are totally disempowered.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so when you realize that you're at fault and you have blame too, then you can start changing the things that you're doing that's contributing to the problem, which is going to help overhaul, right?
And even getting out of the word blame, I might even say, is it fair to say with conflict resolution, you don't want to really focus on, there isn't really any way to look at and blame any one particular thing. It's just intentions are different.
Yeah.
Directions are different.
And I think there's for me, I think we have points in our lives that are turning points maybe. And that experience for me opened my eyes to so many to so many things, right?
Right.
This is not my problem; it's hers.
Yeah.
And but then when I realized that that I was contributing to the thing too, that's changed my whole perspective since that point in time. And that was probably 2002 or 3. Because now when I'm in a conflict with somebody, I do ask myself those questions. What are you doing?
Good.
What are you doing, dude?
Right.
Is what this person's saying true? Hey, Craig, you're doing this and that and that and that.
And sometimes it's not.
Am I doing that?
Right.
Right. Sometimes it's not. But at least I'm saying, hey, it could be me.
Yeah.
And I've gone to other people. Hey, I'm in conflict with this person. Am I doing these things? Is this the way I act to you?
Yeah.
To get feedback on myself.
Yeah.
Because, you don't always see those things in yourself.
And other people do. And, boy, you're on number 9, right? Number 9.
I haven't looked ahead. What is number 9?
It's yours. Use other people for objective feedback.
Now, you have to have somebody who's honest, too.
That's true.
Because you could be...
Yeah, that's a good point.
You could be an ass, and if
They're
somebody's not
brave
honest enough to tell you, then, no, you're not doing that. You're good.
Now your head's big.
Yeah, you're right. You have to have somebody who's honest with you.
That's true, and that's hard to get.
You have to be able to hear the truth, too.
And
yeah, Craig, you're being an ass. Okay, man, I got you.
Right.
Thank you for telling me. Still love you.
Good stuff, man.
And not get defensive. What?
Good stuff, man. You're right on it, man. I tell you, apology and forgiveness cycles. We're going to do a whole show on that. Just mention it here because it's a part of internal emotional awareness. When you've got an apology and or a forgiveness that is in place, whichever side of that you're on. So particularly, let's just say in a marriage, if I've identified something and I'm upset about this with you, and you're like, yo, honey, you did da-da-da-da, and I didn't like that you did da-da-da-da, and it's da-da-da-da to me, So now this crazy issue has been identified, all right? So it's clear that there's a conflict. We, for some reason, look for an apology to come first, right? Does an apology have to come first, Craig? What says you?
No, I'd say no.
Absolutely not. How do you forgive somebody that hasn't apologized?
Yeah. I think you can forgive people who haven't apologized.
You need to.
But if you're trying to work through a conflict, I think you need to get all the issues out, get them resolved, and then say, hey, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Well, I think the main point here is the issues don't even need to be out, don't even need to be talked about. The other person might not even know that there's a problem, and you can still forgive them.
Yeah.
Because the definition of forgiveness is letting go of anger against.
Yeah, forgiveness is not about the other person, really.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the other person.
It's about you.
It's about what you're holding, your internal emotion management. So sometimes you need to apologize, forgive somebody in your own head and heart before you even get into resolving a conflict.
Yeah.
Because then you're much more effective at managing
that's
the discussion.
Interesting. That's the complete opposite of what I think I said a minute ago. You need to get the issues out, then apologize. So,
right, maybe so.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the issues need to be dealt with. If you're in a relationship with somebody and there's issues, they got to be dealt with. Otherwise, the conflict will just continue.
Absolutely. I think you're speaking to another issue of not avoiding it. I thought I had it on here somewhere. I know I thought about it. The episode of Moral Courage. Let's transition to that, and I'll give you a quick 3-step thing. We can do whatever we want with it. But Moral Courage, we talked about that, just like you kind of said. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's different than apology and forgiveness, but it's easy to just chic over stuff, man. There's John Gottman with EFT, emotion-focused therapy, talks about types of marriages, and one of them is an avoidance style, and it's a very high-frequency style. We just avoid problems. We don't have fights. We don't have arguments. We don't have issues. We just chill. Well, you're probably avoiding stuff, right? Because I agree with what you're saying. You got to deal with stuff, but, it's hard to do that. It's scary to do that. Why would I bring up this issue now? We are fine. We just had a great vacation. Bill did the bills this month. It was good. I ain't bringing this up. Well, really? You have to have a certain amount of courage to identify there's a conflict or an issue even in the first place. That's super hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I don't like to have problems. Why would I bring a problem up? Doesn't that create a problem?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to submit it might not create a problem. It's just addressing a problem. So that takes a certain amount of courage. A lot of this is internal emotion management when you think of conflict resolution skills. Good case made?
Yeah.
Want to know 3 steps?
Yep.
They're simple.
You going to write an article?
3 steps to conflict resolution. So it's intended to be a written activity that both or all parties engage in. You work on being short in the descriptions, especially related to opinion-based statements you prepare in written form prior to a meeting of some sort that is agreed upon and limited to an agreed time frame, right? You know, Craig, when you can have a conversation? It's a trick question, not really, but when can you have a conversation?
Anytime?
No. When 2 people agree. How are you going to have a conversation with somebody they don't agree?
I mean, you can have a conversation about disagreeing on something, right?
Not if they ain't agreeing to talk to you.
Oh, you have to agree to talk first. Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
So this is a written thing that you kind of sit down and do. It's a cool little thing. There's something funny about writing things down.
So it's a written. So I'm going to write.
You actually write stuff down, and it's funny that it forces you to circumvent some of the emotional thing and maybe use your frontal cortex to put things on paper. It's pretty cool that way. But the first step is really, as factually as best recollection will allow, you avoid arguing everything here, but you write down the events. Your memory-based events are your memory-based events. That's your reality. Mine is mine. So you write, very limited amount on, paragraph at most, like, sentences at most, like what happened? What are the events? Just to remember and reflect on, like, this is what I know happened in my world.
All right. So we're going to write down the events.
And you don't argue about it. You don't even really talk about it. You don't question the other person. You just accept it that that's their reality. This is mine, and these are the events that I know. And the key word here is be brief. Second step, state what the problem is. You'd be surprised when you write this down and you read what the other person writes down. They might have a whole totally different problem.
Okay.
Keep right?
Going. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
And in that case, by the way, then you have 2 conversations you need to have. You choose which one you're going to write the solutions about first, and then later on, next week or next day or next hour or whatever, you work on the second one, if there actually are 2 different problems. But assuming you actually agree in some form or fashion, you just write down a problem statement. This is just one problem, not a myriad of complicated factors and multiple problems varying all over the place. It's very simple. What's your problem? What do you see is as the problem? And then you simply state possible solutions, or a solution at least. And this is where you can go as long as you want, multiple areas generated, many as possible ideas, creatively come up with what are the things we can do here to solve this problem. Sound simple?
It sounds simple.
Yeah,
I think it's more complicated than that, though.
When emotions get involved.
That's what I was going to say. What if you say state the events, but don't talk about them? Don't disagree.
Don't disagree, yeah.
I think it's easy to get caught up in disagreeing. Well, that's not what happened. Well, yeah, it is.
Exactly.
Well, no, it's not. Yeah, it is.
That's your whole 3-hour fight. Seriously, we've all had them. You go back and forth with the problem. Why do you do this? And every time you did it, and I always think you blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I've seen people go off in my office. I had somebody more than once, obviously, well, maybe not obvious to you, more than once people jump up out of their chair. They're at the office. It is awful. I remember 20 years ago, somebody asked me, he's like, well, so this is really helpful therapy session. I'm really glad that we're here, Chris. So do you think that next time you could keep her in the room? I was like, holy cow, what do you do with that? It's problem-oriented. Don't do that. It's very simple, very short, very brief. And then you move on to the lengthy stuff, the more involved stuff, the positive-oriented focus. And that is, what are the solutions here? What do you want to try? What do you want to do?
So do you find in these at least when you're seeing people who are going through this process, that is there a lot of disagreement in the events normally?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So I can see that happening. So what about the problems? What about the statement of the problem? Is that consistent fairly often?
I think that I'm going to broaden that out into a lot of different areas. Craig, I think in business boardrooms, you probably have 10 people in the room and there's an issue that's up hand. There's events. Our numbers have gone down. What's going on, guys? You might get absolutely 10 different answers on what the problem is. So no, I think there's a lot of divergence. A lot of times you might sit down with a business partner or an intimate relationship and you're writing down a simple sentence on what the problem is. You're going to have two.
Yeah, I think in boardrooms and business settings, there's probably pretty cut and dry what the problem is, right?
But no, I'm telling you not. I don't think they do.
Okay, you're saying
I don't think they do.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't. I'm thinking when I had business partners that I was working on things, I mean, sometimes I had thoughts of like, I think we're going in the way wrong direction. It's not even the right issue. Other times I'm thinking, I think this is definitely the deal. And they bring up and they say like, no, we need to do this. This is the problem. I'm like,
well, those are solutions. But
No. I think this is what's driving the issue that we're having. X. No, I think it's Y. And I think that happens a lot.
Yeah. But I think I guess what I was thinking is if sales numbers are down, that's pretty easy to agree on. The reason why might be in question, but
but what's the problem?
Well, the numbers are down.
No, the market's messed up and our product sucks.
That could be driving the numbers going down, but
that's the problem.
Yeah,
the events are maybe you would think easy to agree on because maybe. We got a report and the sales went down last month. Well, those are the events.
Mm-hmm.
I find that people very much misconstrue or perceive or flat out forget the events. And this is why we don't want to get back and forth on that. Don't worry so much about the events. Don't worry so much, are we on the right problem? Just choose one and fix it. Spend your time focused on the solutions and then try to take actions on those things. Chances are you're going to get some stuff right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're ordering your thoughts in a self-aware, emotionally managed reality towards solutions.
Mm.
We could probably study businesses. I know people have. People that organize themselves around somewhere along those ways, I'm willing to bet they're hands down some of the best countries in America. This is what I would maintain. Because people work through these issues in a business of a family, in the business of a business, just the same.
Mm.
And so these are some of the ideas that I think are good driven factors. How do you sum us up, wrap us up, wind us down, take us in? What do you think?
We talked about a lot. I think taking ownership is the first thing we should probably summarize. Taking ownership and you're part of the problem, you're part of the issue, not blaming the other person. Coming to the table with solutions to the problem. Some of the things we talked about.
Being aware of an engulfment and abandonment factors. Being aware of them,
yeah. And I do think that understanding how other people operate is another key. We talked about being aware, but if you know how other people, if you know their personalities and if you will,
be a good poker player.
Are they engulfment or abandonment? Then you know. Well, this person's just going to push it off. This person needs to talk about it,
Right.
I think understanding those things are very key as well.
Huge.
Yeah, and being aware. And being aware of your own emotions, too.
Yep. 3 steps are really simple. We could spend a lot of time talking about them, but, just write down the events. Very simple. Write down the actual problem, and then focus on and write as much as you want on the solution.
So how does that work? You say, hey, honey, I'm pissed. You're pissed. Let's do the 3 steps.
Yeah.
Come back to me in an hour with your notes or whatever.
An hour, tomorrow. Maybe an engulfment person wants to do it next month. That was a joke.
Yeah,
but somewhat true.
Yeah.
Somewhat true.
Abandonment guy's like 10 minutes?
Yeah, right
Is
now.
that enough time?
Is this, do you write it down now?
10 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're good. Craig, episode number 40, I think, is in the books a little bit. I'll tell you where we're going next. It was a lot of different directions, but some cool stuff. Take us out of here with, you going to teach us something new about podcasts? How do they forward a particular show to an individual person? I think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah, I don't know how it works on Stitcher, but like on iTunes, there's a little 3-dot.
I think there's always a 3-dot
share
thing.
button on there.
Yep.
And then when you click on the share button, it pulls up
text
and email and
IM.
Can
you tweet it to somebody?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can even share it on Twitter. I think you can share it to all your social media.
Hit the dot.
So please do that, you guys. If you're listening out there and you're enjoying our content, we would love for you to share with your friends, man. Word of mouth is the best way to advertise anything, podcasts included. If you want to find out more about our show, through atherapisteyes.com. We have entries for each show. You can listen right there online or find the links to your favorite podcast platform. We've also got an email list I'd love for you to sign up for. And there's links to our social media there too, Facebook and Instagram. And what else, Chris? Does that cover it?
I think it does, man. We are going to hit some seriously cool group discussions coming up, man. I guess over the summer we're going to have, hopefully a really cool thing on brain neurology and brain works. We're going to have a return of Aaron Clark. I'm super emotionally excited about that. We're going to have a guy with medical issues and mental health factors to that. I mean, dude, I'm lining up some seriously cool guests.
Well, when is Aaron coming back?
I don't know.
Yet? Yeah.
We're trying to work that out. It's just,
If you're a fairly new listener, Aaron Clark was episode 3, and he lost his son, Cody, very, very suddenly. And he was on episode 3 talking about that tragedy and how he and his family have dealt with that. And so if you hadn't heard that one yet, go listen to it so you'll be ready for Aaron to come back.
I'm excited about that, man. We're talking about his recovery. It's, dude, Craig, it's like...
It's coming up on a year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, how is that even possible? But it is. It absolutely is. And then we're going to look at a little bit more in depth on abandonment, specifically for Whole Show, and engulfment specifically on Whole Show. We talked about that a little bit today. I kind of, I feel like we're a little bit more in a groove with the show, doing back and forth. And, we might need to redo episode 11 just because I think it's so important with that particular one. So I figured we'd make it into in-depth 2 different shows on each half.
Well, it sounds good. I think that's great information. Understanding how somebody works in a relationship is powerful.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you're enjoying the show. We will see you next week.